The series in a sentence. Tonight we're going to be talking about this thing, reframing. But every week we talk about this, and it's just this. Reminder. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Now, I know that's not something you're filling out on there, something you can add extra, but if I said a series in a sentence, that's what it would be, and that's what we build the groundwork for when we were talking about just looking at our mind and how our thoughts can direct things. We've been talking about how the neural pathways and crazy cool things, but I was looking this week, and there was actually a recent study done that said 70% of all diseases are psychosomatic. I didn't know that. So it starts in your brain. Maybe that's a fake number, maybe it's fake news, I don't know. But I thought of that there's even a huge percentage period that starts in your brain. That's crazy, isn't it? So 70% of what's wrong with me is what's in my brain. I would have thought it was a lot more. But there's a lot more.
You need to let go of those kidney stones.
Hey, well, I've tried. So 70%. So here's the number that I found, and I'm sure there's more because I told you I don't understand the full science behind it and all that. I'll make sure I turn my phone off. The science behind it, but there are over 2,000 chemical secretions from your brain that go to your body at any given time. I guess in the day, or 2,000 secretions. So 2,000 chemical reactions from your brain to your body. Okay, that are happening, and 70% of the diseases are psychosomatic. So that means really how you think does affect your well-being, and that's a crazy thing a lot of times for us to. It's weird to say it that way, but that's a crazy thing for us to think about. But really, how we think directs how we feel. How we think directs a lot of things. So that's why we started off by saying take your thoughts captive. We talked last week about training your mind and helping get there. Well, tonight I want to talk a little bit about reframing. So the big word that we talk about, the science word, outside of all those things are, outside of what we started with by saying 70% of all diseases are psychosomatic, and then that 2,000 chemical reactions happen in your brain at one time, is this thing called cognitive bias. Has anybody ever heard of that?
I have heard of it.
We've heard of cognitive bias. So that means where you technically can make a wrong assumption about something from your past experience, right? Like you have a bias, you're predisposed to think something about something about something. Literally, like you walk into a dark room and you knew there was a table there when you walked in. I guess your cognitive bias is you're going to look out for the table, or you're going to look out for the shed, like a cognitive bias. Or you hear a creak in the middle of the night, it's obviously a murderer coming after you, right? Not the dog that you have in your house that's roaming around digging through the trash, right? Like you can have a cognitive bias, right? Like
a real simple one is like when you're driving down the road and you just got a new car and it's this brand car and you had never seen that car before, and then you get on the road and everybody's got the same car because you are now geared toward, you're focusing on this and you see everybody else in the same thing.
Mad.
Wait a minute, everybody got the same
And
car.
it's the
I
same
thought it was
color.
unique. No, you're not. You're just like everybody else.
Yeah, the salesman lied. He lied to you. He sold you snake oil. So that's perfect. Cognitive bias. So tonight, that's what I want to talk about. We talked about reprogramming our brain, rewiring our brain, training our brain, both of these things. So this reframing is continuing that process of that because of our cognitive bias. So a lot of times we've got to let our past be our past, but our past does affect us. We don't think it does, but that cognitive bias shows proof that our past does affect us. And it's crazy. So how the heck do we get past our past, if I could say that? So here's the thing that I want to remind you as we talk about this thing, reframing. And we'll define it, talk a few minutes from Philippians, and then we'll have a good, awesome night, is this. What Tim just talked about with cognitive bias was this. You saw a different car. You just bought a new car, and you saw it everywhere. Did the facts change? Was that car produced in 2018 or 2019 with those other cars of that same color or that same body style, that same everything? The facts didn't change, but your filter did. Your filter changed. Your perspective changed. That what you were looking at completely changed. And so tonight, here's the power of that. If you change how you look at things, then maybe, and you reframe it, maybe your thoughts will be better. All of a sudden, you'll have more well-being. And when you figure that out, you're going to be paid lots of money because people will buy what you're selling because that's what people are looking for. I will buy what you're selling. But I know that Jesus has just been reminding me of this as I get to talk about reframing. So let's define reframing. Reframing is creating, did you see that? Cognitive bias. I'm just kidding. Creating a different way of looking at a situation, person, or relationship by changing its meaning. So you reframe it. You reframe your situation. So you reframe it. Before we dive into Philippians, we're talking about this guy named Paul again, who is just this master at reframing situations. Like I think of Paul, like his whole story, how he said, hey, you know, Apollos watered, I planted the seed, but God brought the increase. Like Apollos was a great speaker. Apollos was like the guy who had it together. He was the one with all the fireworks and led all the conferences and had everything. But Paul's the one who wrote all the letters that we know about, right? A lot of the letters in the New Testament. But yet, inside of his writing, you can see his thought process. That's the beauty of it. You can see how he was thinking and how God was leading the writing. So I just love that he's talking about that. So Paul literally is a master at controlling your thoughts. He's even talking about take your thoughts captive daily. And so he is a master at reframing a situation. As a matter of fact, like when I'm thinking of reframing, I'm also thinking of this, like because my cognitive bias can technically go to negative a lot. Instead of looking at things that are really bad all the time, what if I changed my reframe and talk about what didn't happen? Like, hey, I ran that red light. Or, hey, I got pulled over for speeding. Thank God I wasn't in a car wreck. Hey, that person, you know, gave me the bird because they told me they were number one. But at least they saw me and I mattered in their life. Right? Like something like that. Like if I reframe that, though, for real, if you reframe it, how that changes. Like we get laughter. We have joy in that. So many times I don't want to do that because instead of reframing it, like, you know, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm doing all that. I'm like the teacher talking in Charlie Brown. I'm so mad. I'm so angry. And God's just been reminding me, like, hey, what if you just created a different way of looking at this situation? What if you just looked at it differently? What if you saw it the way I saw it? Like, in the seasons we're in, maybe that's where we're stuck. Sometimes it's a hard season. God, it's a hard season. We don't know how we're going to get out of it. We don't know what the heck's going on. But what if we looked at it a different way and said, hey, life is but a vapor. This is just a blip on the radar. This season I'm walking in, just a little blip. It's just a little blip. It's easier said than done. And if I say it 1,000 times, it don't mean my circumstance is going to change, but I tell you how I think about it, it completely will. So once again, the facts didn't change, but my filter did. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So if you got your Bible, we're going to be in Philippians 1. It should be available on the Bible app as well. Philippians 1, verse 12 through 14. We're going to see how Paul reframed the situation. So, the reason I was telling you about Apollos and Paul is just, I think of Paul, like, he's probably dreaming he's about to go to Rome and, like, preach in front of thousands. Like, he's thinking about it, you know, like, he's got the band lined up, they're ready to go. Like, you know, it's right after the gladiators leave the arena. Like, he's just waiting, somebody's died, and, like, he's just going to talk to him about some things. Like, you know, he's pumped up, he's got his pump up music, he's ready to go, and he's thinking, man, the whole Colosseum, I'm going to preach in front of the whole Colosseum, and thousands of people are going to come to Jesus because I was obedient in what God called me to do because he blinded me, and he showed me who he was, and he died for me, and he gave me life, so I'm going to preach to thousands of people, and thousands are going to get saved right away. Oh, but poor Paul. It didn't quite work out that way. How many times did we get mad about that? You see, Paul thought to reframe because that's where we pick up when he's writing this letter to the church in Philippi is he's thinking and dreaming of going to Rome to preach to thousands. But here's what happens. He says, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. By the way, Paul's in prison right now when he's writing this. Has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. So in other words, Paul's saying I had to be removed from the situation so that I could give the gospel to these guards in prison with me for the sake of Christ. But on top of that, all the brothers and sisters, the church that's the early church outside of here, now because I'm not there, they've stepped up and became bold and shared the gospel with people around them because they didn't have good old Paul to rely on to go preach the gospel. They had someone else. They had to step in. They had to be obedient, and they could see their gifts, and they could see their calling fulfilled and be all God made them to be. But I thought about that. I said, man, if Tyler wrote this letter, it would say, what in the hell is wrong with y'all? I'm still in jail. Where's my bail money? There's rats. There's guards. It stinks. I can't shower. It smells like poop constantly. And seriously, this guard whistle is way too loud. Like, what in the world is going on? Truly yours. The best is still yet to come. Tyler West. Like, right? Like, I would probably write that if I was in prison for that. I would be so angry. I would be so mad at God. I'd be like, God, the man didn't even give me bail. Like, I don't even get probation for this. Like, I'm in jail. But you see, Paul reframed the situation and understood there was something different going on. I'm not there yet. I'm nowhere near where Paul is at this moment. I wish I could say that I was. I'm not where I used to be, and I got a long way to go to where I need to be. But I can tell you, I love how Paul reframed it, because I know for me, my cognitive bias would be pretty angry. I would be saying, but God, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. You see, Paul understood that Jesus died for him, and he was out there killing people that were in that church. But don't we do the same? When we don't live what God's called us to be, and we don't meet people right where they are and walk with them step by step in whatever season they're in, don't we do the same? We do exactly the same. But Paul reframed it. So tonight I want to talk about 3 ways that we can reframe our situation, okay? 3 ways that we can reframe our situation. Number 1, thank God for what didn't happen. Thank God for what didn't happen. Easier said than done. But thank God for what didn't happen. Like, imagine if Paul hadn't talked to those prison guards. He'd be isolated. He'd be angry. He'd be lonely. He'd feel like it'd never get any better. But instead, he thanked God for what didn't happen. He was able to proclaim the gospel, even though he didn't know he would. As a matter of fact, it led probably later to Constantine going and converting to Christianity, which spread the church even more at that time in Rome. If you ever look at history, like when that's going crazy, right? Like, we'll get to that later, but think about that. He thanked God for what didn't happen, because his fear, if I was Paul, my fear would have been probably this too. When I go to jail, church is dead. It's not going anywhere. These people, I mean, good Lord, they don't even like praying over the water. I don't know where they're going to share the gospel, right? But instead, they stepped up to be all who God made them to be by Paul being where he needed to be, which was in jail. Isn't that nuts? So Paul is saying, hey, look, thank God for what didn't happen, because all these things happened to me. I've been on wrecked boats multiple times. He's saying, I've been through all these things, but I want you to know that all these things work for the glory of God and exactly to be what he called me to be. So whatever season we're in, whatever we're facing, sometimes I wonder if we just thank God for the things that didn't happen, how our filter would change. Hey, for real, you know what, God? I'm thankful. I hate that it's snowing outside, but I'm thankful my power didn't go out. Right? That was crazy the other week, right? Or, hey, God, you know what? Today didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to, but I thank you that you gave me this day. And I'm thankful that your mercies are brand new tomorrow, if you give me that. Hey, God, you know what? I paid a lot more for that power bill than I thought I would, but thank you, God, that I get to have power. Right? Thank you that I have a job, that I can turn the lights on. Thank you that I can, you know what, that person cussed me out, but thank you that they know my number, because apparently they call it all the time. Right? Like, thank you, God. Like, what if we thank God for what didn't happen? It'd be crazy. That's just, maybe, it's just been reminding me, what if we thank him for what didn't happen? Like, you ever been delayed on a plane? Doesn't that just stink? So let me ask you though, would you rather be in that plane and crash and be up there, or be more excited that God still has work for you to do up here, right? So that maintenance is just a little blip on the radar. That 3-hour delay is just a little blip on the radar. In the grand scheme of things, it's just a little thing. But man, for me, that little thing, where's Cinnamon? Like, I'm like, it's like, Chick-fil-A is Sunday. Why is it closed at the airport? Like, right? Like, you'd be angry about that, right? I would be. I don't know about you, but I would be. But God's just been reminding me, hey, what if you just thank me for what didn't happen? And you may not even know everything that didn't happen, but it changes your filter. Like when you're running late somewhere and you're so mad that you're running late somewhere, you don't realize that there was an accident 3 red lights down with a semi-truck, and you were going to be the first one in line at that red light. And that semi was going to hit you. Had no clue. But you thank God for what didn't happen. Number 2, practice pre-framing. I know this sounds crazy, but practice pre-framing. Practice pre-framing. Practice pre-framing. So we're talking about reframing, but practice pre-framing. What I mean is, literally, understand that what I believe leads to how I behave. What I believe leads to how I behave. If I believe the worst about you, I'm definitely not going to be my best around you. Probably not going to be around you. That's just how it is. how I believe, what I believe about you, what I believe about the situation is how I behave. I will tell you, when I'm showing someone a house, I can usually read them right away. And I usually know right away, they're either gonna write a contract today or they're not. But I've been trying to pre-frame and saying, thank you, Jesus, that they may not be writing a contract today, but eventually they are, because they continue to call me to show them houses. But my pre-framing is, well, at least we knocked one more house off the list. At least that's one less place I gotta go. At least that's one more time that I got to say hello to them and tell them about Jesus. At least it's one more time. But not only did I thank God for what didn't happen, I practiced pre-framing and I started looking and said, I'm gonna show 3 houses today, God. Whether I write a contract on one or not, it's up to you, but what I believe is you want me to show those 3 houses for a purpose. Changes my filter. Instead of being like, they never make their mind up. My God, it's not hard, right? Not hard, right? We all get there. We all have situations where it's there. So what if we start matter of fact, another one I thought of is, sometimes events you have, I don't have kids yet, but I know sometimes kids' events can be crazy, right? And it's, oh, God, it's another event. No, I love everyone. Like, I know sometimes it can be crazy, but the pre-framing could be, at least I get to spend time with my kids. Sometimes we can have that with family. Sometimes that coworker we freaking want to just pray for the rapture for in the right way. Maybe that God has them around you for a reason. And we can pre-frame and say, Jesus, I don't know why you have them around me because they drive me absolutely batty. Maybe that's how I make you feel about me, Lord. But I believe that there's a reason for it. And you start flipping that filter. And you start flipping the switch. All of a sudden your thoughts start changing. Like, doesn't it just open an avenue to like some different things that are going on in some different situations? Like, immediately for me, it's laughter. I love the laughter part, so I go right to the laughter. I get excited about it. I go to the laughter and I think about those. But if I'm angry, I don't thank God for what didn't happen. I'm mad at God for what didn't happen. My pre-framing is, this is a waste of time. This stinks. I hate it, right? Which leads to number 3. Look for God's goodness. I know that's crazy, but I look and that's what Paul's doing. And inside these chains, he's looking for God's goodness. He's saying, hey, the entire palace guard knows who Jesus is. The entire palace guard knows who. Also, the church knows who Jesus is even more because they're becoming all that he created them to be. Their faith is growing. So here's what I've always thought of. Look for God's goodness. And this is what happens here. What you look for, you're going to find. Jesus promises that. What you look for, you're going to find. If you look for the terrible in people, I promise you, you're going to find it. If you look for the bad in me, it ain't going to be hard. You're definitely going to find it. You're going to find the bad. And it may take a little longer to look for the good, but man, oh man, how it can change. And if you can see the good and believe the good, it can change your perspective. It can change your mind. And all of a sudden, those chemicals that are rolling around in your brain, all these things, this brain that God created in you that seeks more and searches for truth and knowledge like everything, that's why I get upset when I think about people saying, there's no creator. Like, just think about that. Like, God, you created us to seek knowledge and know more, and eventually they're going to find the truth. It's not there yet. I could either be mad at them for not finding it, or I could say, hey, at least they talked to me about it. I heard those conversations earlier, which is awesome. And hey, at least I had one more opportunity, Jesus, to show them who you are. And I believe that you have good things for them, even if they can't see it. So when you're reframing your perspective, you're reframing your thoughts, it takes practice, because this is not natural at all. Maybe it is for you, and that's awesome. Jesus is doing great things in you. But I can tell you, Jesus has to work this in me all the time, because it's not always that way for me. It's not always that way for me. So tonight, that's what I wanted to share with you. I believe like we can look at our situation, no matter what season we're in, no matter what chains are holding us, no matter where we are, we can reframe our perspective. We can literally change our filter and breathe better because we know that there's something greater happening. So, tonight, here are the questions I have for us. Ooh. Do you have any default filters or frames that change the way you see life experience? Hint, the answer is going to be yes. We just gotta know what those are.
Yeah.
And then number 2, what can you thank God for about your situation? How will you look for God's goodness in it? Right now, I know that sometimes it can be a hopeless situation. And I look time and time again after Bible story after Bible story. That's when Jesus moves the most. That's when God's always moved the most. is the most hopeless, reckless situation, the one that seems like there's no way out. It's when he shows up. But I don't like being in that situation. I don't know about you. I don't like being in that den of lions. I don't like being in that hot fire. I definitely wouldn't like being in chains. Definitely wouldn't want to march around the wall 6 times just so it can fall down the 7th. Are you crazy? And the trumpets blow when it falls down? Okay. Like, you know, I don't want to do that. I just want to go straight to the miracle, right? It doesn't work that way. That's not how God's economy works. He wants to make us better. So tonight, that's why we can look for God's goodness. Those are the things I wanted to talk through, and we'll rock and roll with it.